The first layer that reaches the being's perception is the external environment, the space where the body is inserted, and which activates the perception of the being. The second perceived layer is the body itself, which moves through this environment and serves as a physical dwelling for the manifestation of the being. The third layer is the inside of the body, the intimate and silent space from which the being expresses and reveals itself to the world. The fourth layer is of subtle and complex perception. In it, the universe appears as a dimension seemingly external to the being, a layer that envelops, but does not easily reveal itself. The manifested being is capable of perceiving its fluctuation between the first and fourth layers. Floating in the first layer corresponds to the awareness of the concrete world, the direct perception of physical reality. Floating in the fourth layer, in turn, corresponds to a state of subconsciousness, a diffuse, deep perception, where the universe insinuates itself as part of the being, even if it appears external. The second layer is largely unknown, as it is usually neglected, even though, paradoxically, it is the one most apparently valued. The body is exalted, shaped, and displayed, but rarely understood in its depth, as a vehicle for the manifestation of the being. The body is commonly recognized as the image of the being and, for that reason, treated as its representation. Through it, the being establishes and strengthens its relationship with the environment, that is, with the first perceived layer. The body acts as a bridge between the inner and the outer, between the being and the world. The figure of the being gains emphasis and, over time, ends up being reduced to the second layer, the body. In this reduction occurs an incomprehensible and disproportionate valorization of this layer, as if the being were limited to its physical form, ignoring the more subtle and deeper dimensions of existence. The being uses everything it can understand of the physical world to incorporate elements that provoke impressions in the environment. This action takes place through the body, the second layer, which acts as an instrument of expression and influence over the surrounding space. The teaching directed to the manifested being tends to focus on obtaining and satisfying pleasures, comfort, and safety of the body, the second layer. This orientation reinforces the valorization of the physical dimension, often to the detriment of expanding consciousness and understanding the more subtle layers of the being. Being well in life ends up being reduced to good relationships in which the being recognizes itself. Through the second layer, the body and its interactions, the being understands its presence in manifestation and perceives the limits of its experience in life. The history of the being comes to be referenced by the movement of the physical body in the environment. Through this movement, the being constructs the figures of the past, present, and future, and names this flow as time. The body, while moving through the first layer, becomes the marker of experience and memory. It is in time that the being inserts what it calls emotions. Emotions become the fuel that justifies the presence of the body, and consequently, the presence of the being itself. They give meaning to the experience, shape the narrative of existence, and support the continuity of manifestation. Thus, is formed the poor notion that the being is reduced to the body, and its relationship with the environment, in a limited view that establishes, in an incomprehensible way, the certainty of a beginning, a middle, and an end. This linearity simplifies the complexity of the being, reinforcing ignorance of the subtle layers that transcend time and space. In manifestation, the third layer, the interior of the body, is frequently mentioned and remembered. However, paradoxically, it is also the most neglected. Even though it is an open door for the being to access the knowledge of its essence, it is ignored in favor of the more visible layers. It is in it that lies access to the real being, to the consciousness that transcends form and appearance. The call to the interior of the earth is, in fact, the call to the third layer of the being in manifestation. It is from this deep and silent space that the being originates its creation. Just as the earth holds seeds that germinate, the inner being holds the creative power, the source of authentic manifestation. There would be no first, second, or fourth layer without the third. From it, emanates the natural path of manifestation. Every journey, every experience, and every movement are connected to the third layer, the silent core of the being, where resides the essence that gives meaning to the other dimensions of existence. Convincing the being that it is limited to the lifespan of a physical body, or that there is a future of rewards proportional to physical actions, is to disconnect it from the original path that dwells within. This view limits the essence of the being, diverting it from its inner source, and the wisdom that transcends time, form, and expectation. These false beliefs act as barriers to true work, the one fully embedded in the being's interior. By feeding external illusions, they obscure access to the third layer, preventing the necessary immersion for the revelation of the essence and the realization of the original path. For the manifested being, the so-called path of the heart, which is nothing more than the path inward, toward the third layer, will always be available. It is a silent and constant journey, accessible at any moment, for it is born from the very essence of the being, and leads to its deepest truth. The being itself calls for the being to move away from the false teachings that keep it in unreality. It asks for a true chance to be given to oneself. By staying connected to its interior, the being does not stray from its greatness. For it is in the depth of the third layer that dwell the truth, the strength, and the fullness of the real being.